Do not touch me.
You do not belong here. Turn around and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of before I drag you out myself.
You have said those exact words to me before. Every morning for 6 years.
What?
I know. You do not know why either. Guards, executioner, all of you, why is this creature still standing in my ballroom? Remove her! Remove her this instant before she poisons this evening with the smell of ash and disgrace!
Your ballroom, Malvina. That is interesting. I have scrubbed this floor on my hands and knees every morning for 7 years, and I have never once heard it call your name.
You are a maid. You are the lowest thing in this palace. You have no name worth speaking in this room. Say one more word and I will have you buried beneath the floor you love to clean. You stepped on my fingers this morning. With your gold heel. I counted. That was the 419th time you have put your foot on some part of me and walked away believing it cost you nothing.
Is that a threat? From a maid? From the Ash Girl? No, it is a receipt.
Enough! Let her speak. All of you be still. The stars are aligned tonight and the Queen's decree must be honored. Every soul in this palace has the right to stand in this hall. Every soul—
She is a maid. She is the lowest creature this palace has ever housed. You would give her the floor on this night of all nights? I am already standing in it.
The morning Zara scrubbed the courtyard of the Palace of Oakhaven, the sun had no mercy. It pressed down on the cracked stone like a fist, drawing the last drop of moisture from the earth and leaving nothing but heat and silence. She was on her knees, as she had been every morning for nearly 7 years, pushing a heavy wooden brush across the ancient floor with hands that had long since forgotten what softness felt like. Her clothes were a history of hard days, patched and repatched, stained with ash from the cellar fire she cleaned, with the grease of meals she cooked but was never permitted to eat, with the sweat of labor that began before dawn and ended long after midnight. She did not complain. She never had. The other servants whispered about her. Some said she was simple, some said she was broken. The children of the noble houses had given her a name they thought was cruel, the Maid of the Ash, and she had accepted it without argument. She wore her silence like armor. She wore her stillness like a crown nobody could see. It was Lady Malvina who arrived first that morning, as she always did, trailing crimson silk that whispered across the stone like a threat. Malvina was the most powerful woman in the court, beautiful in the way that sharp things are beautiful, dangerous in the way that storms are dangerous. She did not walk through spaces, she conquered them. She stepped forward, deliberately, and brought the sharp gold tip of her heel down on Zara. Zara did not flinch. She did not cry out. She lifted her eyes, amber, quiet, ancient, and held them steady. "You are breathing my air again, Zara," Malvina said, softly the way cruelty speaks when it has practiced long enough to sound like elegance. "I have told you before, stay in the shadows. That is where the rodents belong." Zara's voice, when it came, was calm and melodic, completely untouched by pain. "The air belongs to the Great Spirit, my lady. I only borrow what is given." Something flickered in Malvina's eyes, not guilt, never guilt, but something that resembled discomfort. It made her angrier. She turned and kicked Zara's bucket with one swift, precise movement. The dirty water spread across the courtyard floor and ran across the hem of Malvina's own crimson dress, blooming there like a dark stain. Malvina's gasp was theatrical and terrible. "Guards!" she screamed, her voice splitting the morning open. "Drag this filth to the cellar. No food for 3 days. Let her eat the dust she loves so much." They dragged her. Nobody spoke in her defense. That night, alone in the damp dark of the cellar, Zara sat beneath a single window that offered nothing but a sliver of moonlight. She was not crying. She had stopped crying in year 2. She reached into the hidden fold of her rags and withdrew a small iron seed, no larger than a thumb, and in the darkness it pulsed with a soft, steady blue light that fell across her face like a whispered promise. She held it carefully, the way you hold something that belongs to the whole world. 6 years, 11 months, 29 days. The soil is prepared. The hearts have been tested. She closed her fingers around it and waited. 2 days later, the palace of Oakhaven transformed itself for the night of the 7 stars, the most sacred evening in the kingdom's calendar, held once every 7 years when the stars aligned above the great weirwood throne. Thousands of candles floated without wicks through the grand ballroom. Golden pillars caught their light and scattered it like rain. Nobles arrived in iridescent masks that hid their faces but never their hunger. Everyone wanted to be seen. Everyone wanted to matter. The chief elder took his place on the dais before the empty white throne and called the room to silence with nothing more than the weight of his presence. 7 years ago, Queen Althea vanished. She left one decree. She said, "I shall return when the pride of the high is at its peak and the hope of the low is at its floor." Tonight the stars align. The queen is among us. The room erupted in whispers that moved like fire through dry grass. Lady Malvina stood at the front, radiant in fresh crimson, composed and certain. She had already decided she was the answer to the elder's words. Her wealth was unmatched. Her beauty was undeniable. Her cruelty was something she had always called strength. She smiled the smile of someone who has never once doubted their own reflection. "Distant land," she announced to the nobles nearest her. "She will see my leadership and name me her successor. There is no other choice." The nobles nearest her agreed, as they always did. Agreement was the only language Malvina had ever rewarded. The oak doors at the far end of the ballroom opened slowly. The music stopped, as though it had been swallowed. Zara walked in. She was still in her rags, still covered in the soot of the cellar, still wearing the face of someone the palace had spent 7 years trying to erase. The guards moved instinctively to block her path, but something in the way she walked stopped them cold. There was no hesitation in her stride, no apology in her bearing. She moved through that glittering massed crowd the way a river moves through stone, not around it, through it, inevitable and without hurry. Malvina's composure shattered the moment she saw her. "You!" she breathed, then louder. "You! How did you escape? Guards, executioner, remove this creature before she pollutes the queen's arrival with her presence." Zara did not look at her. She walked to the center of the ballroom, stopped beneath the great chandelier, and turned to face the chief elder directly. "The floor is dirty, elder," she said, her voice carrying through the silence with no effort at all. "I have spent 7 years trying to scrub the rot from this palace, but it is not in the stones, it is in the people. The nobles laughed. It was the particular laughter of people who have never once been questioned, sharp and contemptuous, and slightly afraid. Zara did not flinch at the laughter. She raised the iron seed above her head and held it there. And the faint blue light that pulsed from it reached every corner of that glittering room and touched every masked face. She said, "You fed me scraps and called it charity. You lashed my back and called it discipline. You looked at my rags and saw a slave, but I looked at your crowns and saw only glass." She closed her hand around the seed. She crushed it. What happened next would be spoken of in Oak Haven for 1,000 years. A wave of silver light blasted outward from her closed fist, moving through the room like a held breath, finally released, freezing every guard mid-step and silencing even the floating candles into absolute stillness. Then the rags began to unravel, slowly at first, grey thread by grey thread, each strand catching the light as it came loose and spinning itself into gold. The golden threads rose around her body like a whirlwind of living fire, weaving and folding and building in the air above her head. The soot on her face dissolved into something that looked like diamond dust and drifted away on a wind nobody else could feel. Her hair, matted, pressed flat by years of cellar darkness, lifted and flew upward and arranged itself into a crown of white flame that burned without heat and cast light without shadow. When the gown came, it came last. Deep midnight blue velvet that moved as though it breathed. And within its folds, the stars. Not decorations, not embroidery. The actual stars, small and true and burning, turning slowly in the fabric of her dress as though the night sky had been folded and given to her to wear. The Maid of the Ash was gone. Queen Althea stood before them. Her eyes, those amber eyes that had held steady under Malvina's heel, that had stayed open through 7 years of darkness, now burned with a light that was patient and enormous and entirely without anger. This was not the light of revenge. It was the light of something that had always been true, finally allowed to be seen. The chief elder fell to his knees so hard the sound echoed. Every noble in that room followed. Masks cracked against the marble floor. Iridescent costumes crumpled. All the pretense of that glittering evening came undone in a single moment, scattered by the light of a woman they had served food to on their worst days and ignored on their best. Lady Malvina did not kneel. She stood frozen, her face a map of terror, her composure completely and permanently gone. Althea turned to her last. "Stand up, Malvina," she said. Her voice was quiet. It did not need volume. "You wanted to lead. You told everyone here tonight that you were the only choice. Stand up and receive what leadership truly requires." Malvina rose on trembling legs. "My queen, I did not know it was you. I was protecting the dignity of the court. Everything I did, it was for the kingdom." "That," she said, "is your crime. Not that you are cruel to a maid, but that your kindness has always been a transaction. You show mercy only to those you fear. You show grace only to those who can give you something in return. A kingdom built on the backs of the unseen will always crumble from the floor up, and you, Malvina, have been rotting this floor for years." She raised her hand once, gently, the way you close a door at the end of a long day. The crimson silk of Malvina's gown began to change, thread by thread. The deep red faded and coarsened and patched itself into the same grey, worn,
ash-stained rags that Zara had worn every day for 7 years. They hung on Malvina's body like a truth she could not remove. You will take my place in the cellar. You will scrub these floors until you can see your reflection in the stone, not your beauty, but your soul. The day that stone shows you something honest, you will be free. Malvina opened her mouth. Nothing came. When dawn broke over Oakhaven, Queen Althea stood on the high balcony and looked down on the people who had always been there, the workers, the forgotten, the ones who had kept the kingdom breathing while the nobles kept plotting.
The credit, she was not wearing gold. She wore clean linen and the iron seed around her neck, small and dark against her collarbone, no longer glowing because it had already done everything it was made to do. She raised her hand, not as a gesture of power, but as a gesture of peace, the same hand that had scrubbed cracked stone in the early morning dark, the same hand that had been stepped on and still held steady. The era of the mask is over, she said, her voice carried easily to the streets below, to the beggars and the builders and the mothers and the children who had spent their whole lives being told they were too small to matter. From this day, we do not measure a person by the height of their heart. We measure them by the depth of their heart. For the queen is not the one who sits on the throne. She is the one who serves the people. Below her, the city began to glow, slowly, gently, from the ground up, the same quiet blue light that once lived in a small iron seed, carried in the pocket of a woman nobody thought to look at twice. The light did not come from the palace. It came from the people, and it was enough. True royalty is a choice. How did you treat the maid in your life today? Malvina was cruel to someone she thought was beneath her, and it destroyed her. But here is the question. If you had been a noble in that ballroom, would you have spoken up for Zara or stayed silent to protect your place at the table? Be honest in the comments. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.